Nothing says Christmas like yet another peace proposal. But here we are. This time, it is a long negotiated plan from the United States and Ukraine. On full display, the continued rift inside of the White House about how to handle the whole situation. But there is a lot of good news for the West here. The turmoil where Russia seemingly leaked a document that Russia claimed reflected a joint US-Russia position has disappeared. In fact, if you told me that this proposal had come from the Biden administration, I would have no reason to doubt you. In terms of one's ability to implement the provisions, though, the document has significant shortcomings, related to both the Trump administration, but also Europe overall. You can read the full 20 points in the link that I will leave in this video's description. For today, I'm going to keep things short, because most of the West has other things to do over the next 48 hours, and the key provisions that will drive everything from here can be summarized in just 2 key sections of the document. So let me read to you those key sections and explain how they interact. And I will begin with the one that reflects territorial control, as that has been the main sticking point and will remain the main sticking point of these proposals. Point 14. In Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson Oblasts, the line of military positions on the date of signing will be recognized as the de facto front line. Subpoint A. To determine troop movements needed to end the war and set up potential free economic zones with Russia withdrawing its troops from these areas. That's where this subpoint stops. If it sounds like a sentence fragment, it is, and I do not know what it is trying to say here. Fortunately, the rest of it is more coherent. Subpoint B. Russia must withdraw its troops from occupied parts of Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv Oblasts for the agreement to take effect. Subpoint C. International forces will be placed along the front line to monitor the agreement's implementation. Subpoint D. The parties agree to follow the rules and obligations imposed by the 1949 Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols, including universal human rights. The main provision of Point 14 and subsection B basically tell you what the line on the map is going to look like. The front line along the 4 eastern oblasts gets frozen wherever it may be following the parties' signatures. That becomes the, quote, recognized de facto division, which is still an utterly bizarre and self-contradictory phrase, but no one asked for my opinion here. Russia then withdraws from everywhere else in Ukraine, as there are some small fronts elsewhere in the country. The main takeaway here, as compared to the Russian proposal, is that Ukraine has successfully pushed the United States to accepting a division that does not have the domino problems discussed at length before, where Ukraine ceding territory in the Donbass gives up its fortification lines, which then allows Russia to restart the war under a better military position than was the case at the time of a ceasefire. In terms of the practicality of these territorial divisions, there is a major problem with what I just read. It is not something that Russia is willing to accept given the status quo of the war. We know that the Kremlin prefers to grind away at its slow but steady territorial gains, because that is exactly what we have seen for more than 2 years now. For all of the talk of the massive costs that Russia is paying for these gains, the mindset in the Kremlin is that they are worth it. Now, over time, that may change. At some point, Ukraine may start inflicting so much damage on Russia's energy industry that the Kremlin may conclude that the territory gained is good enough, and that pressing further is not worth those additional costs. But we are not there yet. To be clear, Putin is facing a ton of internal pressure right now. It is just that the Putin is done narrative is actively misleading, and neither Ukrainian nor European policymakers take it seriously. But back to the document. The proposal actually puts Russia in a worse position than what we discussed with the Eastern Oblasts. Subsection B forces Russia to leave the other Ukrainian oblasts that it has a foothold in, some of which Russia is currently making active advances in. You have heard me say this dozens of times before, but the point remains. Sustainable peace agreements must be commensurate with the military balance between the parties. This is not commensurate with the military balance as it stands today, so it will not work without some artificial adjustments. Subsection C seems to be getting there by having an international force monitor the implementation of the agreement. But monitor does not mean enforce. Watching things happen is not the same as having a barrel of a gun make those things happen. Well, the bright side is that we can go earlier in the document and find an attempt to solve that problem. Section 5. The US, NATO, and European signatory states will provide Ukraine with Article 5-like guarantees. Cute that Section 5 references Article 5. Following points apply. Subsection A. If Russia invades Ukraine, a coordinated military response will be launched, and all global sanctions against Russia will be reinstated. B. If Ukraine invades Russia or opens fire at Russian territory without provocation, the security guarantees will be considered void. If Russia opens fire on Ukraine, the security guarantees will come into effect. C. The US will receive compensation for providing security guarantees. Interestingly, Zelensky has said that this provision has been removed, so I am leaving it here just for the sake of completeness. D. Previously signed bilateral security agreements between Ukraine and around 30 countries will remain in place. We could spend substantial time trying to dissect what Article 5-like guarantees mean here. On the surface, it references the central collective security provision of the North Atlantic Treaty. Inside of NATO, that works fine, because we have decades of understanding what that means. Outside the halls of Brussels, though, things get murky. Article 5, as written, is itself vague. The North Atlantic Treaty only works because it has a long history that has created respect that cannot be conjured out of nowhere. And the whole NATO system operates under reciprocal assistance, whereas the proposal here only goes one way. But let's just phrase it as an attack against Ukraine is an attack against all, with all here to be determined by whoever signs the agreement. And let's further impose the same expectation here that Article 5 has generated over decades of history, where an attack generates serious military support and active effort from the non-attacked countries. Subsections A and B outline what that would look like, and just like Article 5, stipulate that security assistance is defensive in nature. Subsection D allows for yet more rigorous enforcement. There are no problems with the words written on the page. However, there remain significant problems with the credibility of the agreement. In other words, not looking at what is being said, but rather understanding the expectations of what everyone will do. What, over the last 4 years, has led you to believe that anyone from outside of Ukraine will put boots on the ground in the event that Russia breaks the agreement? What, over the last 4 years, has led you to believe that anyone from outside of Ukraine will flood Ukraine with so much military aid that Ukraine would be able to completely ravage Russian forces for itself in the event that Russia breaks the agreement? Well, that is a big problem. If you do not think that these things are credible, the folks over in the Kremlin will not think that they are credible either. And that sinks the value of the words written in Section 5. I know that the center of the discussion of the agreement will point to the Trump administration here, that the Trump administration has been actively unhelpful to the Ukrainian cause at various points over the last year. That is true, and it is a significant problem with enforcing a ceasefire. But it is also a problem that dates back to the Biden administration, especially as the Biden administration was more cautious than the Trump administration on many dimensions to avoid escalation risks with Russia. But that is neither here nor there. More presently, Europe has not taken the actions that would signal credibility here either. EU members debate endlessly about seizing Russian assets and moving away from Russian energy independence. They have filled the funding gap that the Trump administration left by withdrawing economic aid to Ukraine. But the provisions of Section 5 go well beyond supplying Ukraine with money. They are about either putting troops on the ground or funding Ukraine at levels equivalent to Europe already being in direct war with Russia. Neither of those things Russia believes to be credible. All told, that means we have a deal that is not self-enforcing. The Kremlin is looking at all of the occupied territory that it would have to retreat from if it agrees to the deal, and effectively foregoing in the Donbass, and it is not believing that it will be punished if it continues pushing as it currently is. Heck, for even those non-credible security guarantees to come into effect, Russia would have to sign the agreement, which it will not. So we once again find ourselves back where we once were. This time, we are circa October 2025, where Russia continues to advance, and Ukraine is not at immediate risk of losing US intelligence assistance or US weapons via European procurement. But we are continuing to see two very different visions of European security affairs from the Trump administration, and the rift there will drive a lot of the potential political intrigue going forward. As for more practical guidance, the answer here is the same as it has been for this entire calendar year. If the United States and Europe want Russia to take them seriously about the enforcement of a peace deal, the parties need to send costly signals today about what the consequences will be if Russia continues the war. That means delivering military aid in quantities not yet seen, and risk-taking at levels that no one has shown the courage to try. Maybe the idea here for Ukraine and the Ukraine-sympathetic half of the Trump administration is to bait Putin into outright rejecting the deal, which might increase Trump's personal support for Kyiv. But that is still a long way from establishing the necessary US credibility here, never mind that it does nothing to establish European credibility. Meanwhile, for those of you looking for a last-second Christmas gift, may I suggest the digital editions of these two excellent books about the war? Check the video description for more information on them. And if you enjoyed today's video, then please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Take care.